Okay, for our cloudy with a chance of meatballs, we're going to be using a nice large piece of paper here. Make sure that you put your name and class code on the back, okay? Then on the front, we're going to draw a cityscape line. So it's going to look like the outlines of buildings, and we're going to do that 3 times. Our goal though is to stay about halfway down on our paper. We don't want to necessarily go above that kind of halfway point, so that way we have enough space for the foods that we're going to have falling from the sky. So let's draw our cityscape line 3 times. Okay, I am taking a Sharpie and I am going over all 3 of my city lines that I have drawn. We could have drawn them first with the Sharpie, but since this is something new, I always like to draw in pencil first in case I make a mistake. I have the ability to erase. So I'm going over these lines, almost done here. Then I'm going to add something that's called cross-hatching. Cross-hatching is something that artists can use when they don't really have the ability to like color or shade in, but it allows you to add shadows by using just lines, okay? And you have to imagine that like the areas that are going to be closest to you are going to have the least amount of shadow because they're close to you, and the areas that are farther away are going to have more shadow because they are farther away from you. So to do cross-hatching, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make some vertical lines. And the area that's close to me, my vertical lines are going to be spaced farther apart, like so. They don't have to be exactly spaced apart, but I'm trying to make it the same distance each time I draw, and I'm trying to keep my lines straight up and down. If you feel like this would be better accomplished by using a ruler, you are welcome to use a ruler for these lines. Okay, so you're going to do that all the way across this first layer. When you're finished with that, you're going to do the lines in the second layer, but this time they're going to be closer together. By putting them closer together, you're actually going to create a look that they are darker because you have more lines in that area of your picture. So it's going to make them look like it's a little bit more in shadow because you're adding more black to that area. Ooh, that one got a little wonky. And I'm going to continue to do this all the way across that second row of my cityscapes. Then when I'm ready for the third row, what am I going to do? You guessed it. I'm going to put those vertical lines, but they're going to be much closer together than they were the first or the second time. So that way they are going to appear to be darker. You can kind of see that illusion on the picture, that this one farther back is darker. I don't know if you noticed, but in the book, the artist kind of also used this idea to add shadow. Yes, a lot of the pictures did have color. It was very simplified color, but it did have color. But the areas in shadow did not have a darker version of that color, but rather the artist, when they drew, added more lines to that area to create the look of shadow when color was added. Okay, so you're going to do this all the way across the third layer of your cityscape. Okay? Okay, the next step with my city is I'm going to add color to my 3 layers of my cityscape, and I'm going to do that with watercolor paints. Okay? When you are choosing the colors to paint, think about the fact that this layer is supposed to be lighter, a little bit darker, and then the darkest. So it's probably going to help me to choose colors that make sense to do that with, okay? That's not to say that I can't choose purple for my first layer, because purple is typically a darker color, but maybe what that means is that I need to create a lighter tint of purple. And the way that I do that is I'm gonna use my lid for that. So let me show you how you can create a tint of a color using watercolors. Whatever color you're choosing, I'll choose purple. You're gonna add some water into it, kind of wake it up, and gently swirl your color around, kind of creating a little pool of the color. Okay, then up here in my lid, I'm just gonna add in just some straight water up here, okay? And I wanna add a good amount of water because remember, I have a large space to paint. I don't wanna run out, okay? I don't need to pour in the water, but I've got a nice good sized puddle of water here. Then I'm just gonna take my brush and I'm gonna dip just the tip in, and then I'm gonna swirl it around in my color, okay? What this is doing is this is creating a tint of my purple. The best way to lighten watercolors is to add more water. You get a lighter tint with it. So now that I've got a little puddle of this light purple, I can go through and paint in my watercolor. Now, this is not watercolor paper, so the more you go over and over with your water, the more chance that you have for your paper to kind of break down. I felt like my purple was a little bit too light. Okay. Try to stay inside that level of your cityscape, and you're just going to paint the layers of your city. If you run out of your tint that you've made of your color, you can always make more. You just need to follow the same steps that you did to create the first time. Okay, you do not have to create a tint for this bottom layer. If you want to paint your bottom layer with yellow, which is the lightest color that we have, you are welcome to do that. And if you do just yellow, you probably don't even need to create a lighter tint of the yellow. You could probably just use straight yellow out of the paint palette. Okay, so when you are finished painting this first layer, this first level here, then you're going to choose a color that's a little bit more of a medium tint, a medium version of your color that you're choosing. So say for instance, if I was choosing blue, I could create a tint like I'm doing here with the purple, but maybe I would add a little bit more of the actual color into my water. So I have a lighter version, or excuse me, a darker version of the color, but not quite as dark as what it would be if I was just to come straight out of the pan. Okay, so let's paint your cityscape. Okay, while our background is drying, you're going to get a piece of paper that's going to be about the size, maybe a little bit bigger, and then you'll get a half sheet of my styrofoam here. This is how we're going to create the stamp for our food. So think about what food item you'd like to have falling from the sky, and you're going to draw it here on your piece of paper. The reason why we're not drawing it straight onto the foam is if you make a mistake on the foam, there's no going back on it. So we're going to draw it first on our piece of paper, so that way you can make changes if you need to. One of the items that fell from the sky was some pie. So I'm going to draw a piece of pie. And I'm going to draw the top triangle of my pie. And I'm drawing at an angle because I want to be able to see on the side view of the pie. So here's my side view of my pie. Something like that. And pie usually has those kind of fun cutouts in the crust. Okay, and then I'm going to make my crust here for my pie. There we go. And then I can kind of do some different lines here to show the filling for my pie. Okay, so there's my pie. Pretty happy with that. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my pie picture and I'm going to lay it on top of my foam, okay? And I'm going to go over the lines of my pie with my pencil, okay? So when I do this, I want to press hard so that way I'm leaving an indentation on the surface of my foam. If I make a mistake, don't go back, just roll with the mistake, okay? The reason I don't have my lead out on my pencil right now is because mechanical pencils, the lead is usually a lot pointier than a traditional pencil, and I tend to poke through the surface of my paper when I use a mechanical pencil. So that's why I do not have the lead out on my pencil. I'm taking my time, making sure that I get all of the lines that I drew. And like I said, I'm pressing hard on my piece of paper. I don't want to press so hard that I'm going to poke a hole, but I want to press hard enough that I'm going to leave an indentation on my foam. This is a good time too to think like a critical artist. If you are drawing something and you think, oh, I'd like to have another line here, you can do it without actually drawing it. Or if you're thinking, oh, I need less lines, you can also do that as well. I'm gonna add some kind of texture here to the crust of my pie as well, okay? So once I've done that, I know it's a little hard to see, but you can kind of see the indentation of where my drawing was. So I've got these grooves now in my piece of foam. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my pencil and I'm gonna go back over those grooves as best as I can. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want these grooves to be really far down onto my piece of foam. I don't want to poke all the way through it, but I want to press down so that I'm leaving an indentation on the foam, which will make my printing process go better. And if there's some lines you can't see, you can kind of guess where you think they might be. Remember, you have your picture here to use as a reference. If you're like, where was that line? Oh, it was right there. Okay, now I know. I can go in and put it in there. Or if you're realizing, oh, I missed going over a pencil line, you can add it on there. Okay, so there is my food. Now I'm ready to start stamping it. And what I'm going to be using for that is I'm going to be using washable markers, and I'm going to have a spray bottle with a little bit of water in it, and I'm going to be stamping my food onto my picture, and then I'm also going to cut out my stamp so that way I don't have any of this part here. Okay? Actually, I don't know if I need to. Let's try it without cutting out my stamp. That might make it easier for me to stamp so I've got something to hold on to. Let's try it. I'm coloring each part of my stamp with my washable markers. Before I'm ready to stamp, I'm going to spray my paper lightly, gently dab it because I don't want standing water, and spray it again, and I'm going to repeat this process 3 times. I color it each time before I'm ready to stamp, spray my paper, blot it dry, spray again, blot, and stamp. I want water on my paper, but I don't want my paper to have standing water, so that's why I blot.